In Tim Winton's post-apocalyptic Australia, juice is a metaphor for a lot. Fuel for survival, willpower, courage, redemption. Tim Winton's new novel opens with this line, like an epitaph on a gravestone. To those who, from the beginning, saw blood in the machine, tasted death in the air, and cried, enough. From the beginning, is that us now, or are we more likely somewhere in the middle? Juice is a story told from the far reaches of a not too distant future we're well into the process of creating. A man, our unnamed narrator, recounts his life story to save himself and a child he's taken under his care. We have an Arabian Nights-style framing narrative as the man tells the bowman his life story in an attempt to save both his life and the life of the child. This is Winton's first new book in 7 years, and it's speculative fiction, climate fiction. Whatever you want to call it, we have another literary writer, in this case one of Australia's most well-known and regarded, resorting to genre fiction. It's interesting to think about why that's happening. As if mainstream literature itself is inadequate to the task of depicting our past, present, and our future. Juice doesn't skirt around the hows and whys of societal collapse like Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Winton gives us the full picture as far as his setting of a century or two in the future allows, a world reeling from the terror and barely holding on. Juice is a book not only about an imagined future. Here Winton, a writer known for literary Australiana and saccharine sentimentality, rages against our present, against us, against where we are in 2024 and where we are headed. Winters were hot, the summers lethal, locals were hardy and adaptable, but it was rare to see people of a great age. And for reasons nobody seemed to understand or discuss, the number of births had begun to wane. The culprits? Big oil, big gas, and the corporations that gutted the planet. That are gutting the planet now, relentlessly, as Winton pens his novel. In Winton's world, the tables have turned somewhat. As the world staggers onwards, a communist-inspired enclave hunts the generational remnants of mining magnates and capitalist oligarchs. All kinds of archives. You're saying they left you stuff that shows how to make the old world? Quite the opposite. Much of it's a record of the old world killing itself, which is exactly what happened. That dispensation destroyed itself, and much of the world and many of its people along with it. This violence, hunting down targets, is not questioned. It's not relished in, exactly. It's barely described, in fact, but there's a sense of resigned justification in the writing, because the damage has been done already to the world, and this is an emotionless meting out of justice. Nothing more, nothing less. This is no Cloud Street. There's no warm nostalgia for the Australian way of life here, but there are glimpses of natural beauty among the ruins. A deadly, vengeful landscape reclaiming itself from human destruction. Winton renders the natural world with devastating, almost sacred detail. This is a requiem for a country and a planet on fire. It's also a love story. The narrator and Sun, his partner of Chinese ancestry, China's called the Hermit Kingdom in this setting, they eke out a fragile happiness on the plains. And without spoiling too much, later in the novel, Winton pulls the rug out with some surprising elements that are more sci-fi than cli-fi. A sleight of hand that redefines how we think about survival and the natural order of life. This book isn't an easy read, but perhaps it's a necessary one. One you'll need to approach with some staunchness in your gut. Ashley Hay, a writer and guest on ABC's The Bookshelf, put it this way. The narrator is not just a stand-in for Scheherazade from the Arabian Nights, but also for authors of climate fiction more broadly, who are using their craft to warn us of what the consequences of climate inaction might look like. The man at the bottom of the hole in the dark, telling the story as if his life depends on it, felt to me like a completely exquisite metaphor for what a lot of writers are trying to do, in terms of not just telling the story of where we are, but in telling the story of the future we are creating with the decisions that we are making now. Juice is very much a story about the future we're creating right now. The world rushing blind to the climate-devastated future, which Winton lays out in excruciating, embodied detail. The question is, will we listen?